Hi everyone, I'm Kimbyrleigha and this is Kimbyrleigha Live. And on this channel, we discuss, we analyze, and we react to current and ongoing true crime cases. And we are currently on day 28. I mean, we are of the Karen Reed retrial. And if you're new here, welcome. I have a main true crime channel here on YouTube, and I also have a podcast with my husband. This is a video podcast here on YouTube as well. And those are both going to be storytelling, solved cases, narrative format. If you like that kind of thing, look below in the description box. And we have a huge announcement. Okay. Huge announcement. We have a new t shirt. This was something I worked on all weekend. It was by request. It has already dropped. We've already sold a pretty good amount of them, actually. I was pretty surprised, but I guess not because I absolutely love the design. Okay. It was your idea, but it's called Blowing Through the BS. And as you can see, there's a snow plow. It's pink. It says Law Baddies on it. And we've got the DNA evidence just, blowing, just blowing, right? And we're just blowing it right through it. So get yours while you can. Don't know how long we're going to have this on, but I just had to do it. It was a request, and I thought it was just too good not to. So you're joining me, and today I have to say, I don't know, in my opinion, this day wasn't great for the defense. You can challenge me on that, but we have a lot to get through. I'm going to highlight as much as I can. And just so you know, you are welcome here no matter what side you might think is winning. I mean, are we really in a win lose? Yeah, necessarily, yes, right? But I just want you to know that as long as you're kind, okay, that's the key because we did have to ban some last time. As long as you're kind and you're not coming down on me for things, that's fine. Don't attack me. It's okay to make an opinion about what's going on. But other than that, I want to tell you that our lovely mods, thank you every time for being here. And I'm sure they're going to link the new t shirt in the chat. And also, tag me on Instagram, please. It's the same name as I am on here, Kimbyrleigha. I would love to see what you are wearing. So today's all about the crash daddy, Dr. Daniel Wolfe. I'm sure you already know who he is. He needs no introduction for those of you that have been here for trial number 1. But Dr. Daniel Wolfe, another Dr. Wolfe, we had the pathologist Dr. Wolfe that was for the state. This one is for the defense. He's the director of the accident reconstruction at ARCCA, and this is a forensic engineering firm. It's comparable, I guess you could say, to Aperture, which, that was Dr. Welcher and Dr. Welcher and Burgess. But Dr. Wolf specializes in accident reconstruction and human factors. And his past contracts include the Department of Defense, the NHL. He holds a PhD in electrical and computer engineering, and has handled, I think he said, over 1,000 cases in his field. He explained human factors play a role in accidents, and this refers to how a person perceives and then responds to hazards like things like whether a driver can see a pedestrian at night because of the lighting, the clothing somebody's wearing, or the environment that they're in while they're driving, right? And this plays a key role in evaluating driver behavior in accidents like the one we may be discussing. Because remember, it's up for debate whether an accident occurred. The state says yes, it does. The defense says no, it doesn't. So he defines accident reconstruction as the application of physics and engineering science to collision events. And his work includes analyzing pedestrian impacts, vehicle crush dynamics, I think he called it, and how forces are distributed in collisions. So he went on to explain all kinds of cases he's worked on. He's reconstructed collisions involving everything from multi-car pileups, which are so scary, and there's a lot that have been going on lately on those, to pedestrians struck while walking or running. And this includes determining how and when somebody was hit. So I think you understand why the defense wants to call him, right? He also talks about how fast cars were going and whether damage is consistent with the claims being made. And of course, more in depth on his education, which is very important after Burgess and Dr. Welcher, Wolf has a PhD from James Madison University. He also has a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. And his dissertation focused, and this was so interesting to me, it focused on technology called, I think it was smart glass. And they were all about developing a novel acrylic-based version of this smart glass. And it's the same material we're going to be talking about today. And do you want me to try to say it? Can you try saying it? It's abbreviated PMMA. Polymethyl That's probably not how you say it. Probably methyl, but yeah, no, that's a no-go. It's acrylic, and it's what's in the Lexus taillights. So what's interesting is his dissertation was about this acrylic material. So that's linked to this case, right? Since the Lexus is made out of the same material and he studied it in depth. So he is familiar with it. But beyond degrees, he has taken continuing education courses in heavy vehicle forensics, black box downloads, crash data analysis, and he is ACTAR certified. Remember when Brennan asked poor Dr. Russell if she was ACTAR certified? She's like, no. And that I found out what that was. It's the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstructionists. Why would Dr. Russell have that? Anyway, he also has experience in photogrammetry. Was that what it was called? And that's what Welcher was talking about, measuring objects from photos, the distance. That's what he did for the incident where Karen was backing up and hit the traverse. Remember that whole thing? So Dr. Wolfe actually confirmed that that is standard in accident reconstruction and it's accepted in the field. Even if you're not physically at the scene, you can rely on that. I'm almost done, but I wanted to recap all of this in case nobody knows who this person is. And of course, I'm going to get into the chat right when I'm starting to play the clips. But Dr. Wolfe is also trained in extracting crash data from vehicle black boxes, even those made by Bosch. And we heard about Bosch before. So these modules contain critical data about everything from speed, braking, and crash events. He's a member of multiple professional organizations. I'm not going to get into all of them. He's done peer-reviewed papers about accident recon and physics. Now, as far as pedestrian auto collisions, Wolfe has said he analyzed hundreds of these type of impacts. I think that's really important, right? He's seen it all: head-on, side impacts, runovers. And his job is to assess how the body interacts with different vehicle parts. He performs kinematic tests, which is motion to the body, to study these pedestrian impacts, and his firm ARCCA builds all kinds of tests to measure speed, force, and trajectory of the human body. So why is he here? Well, of course, he's here to determine, we'll get into how he was introduced to the defense, but he's here to determine whether an accident even happened. And he's also here to refute the evidence that Welcher brought forward. Remember, all of that information, it touches on everything we've already gone through. And his job is to bolster his own experiments and refute the ones we've already seen, like the Blue Man Group experiment, that one. So I'm going to get into it. I just really thought that I had to tell you a little bit about that because I'm not going to play any of that. But he does get into the issue that the judge wouldn't let in, which was that he was hired by the FBI, the Department of Justice, if you will, and they did a probe into this case. They weren't picking a side. They didn't even know who Karen was or who these people were. They were given all of the evidence, and it was their job to find out, did a crash occur? So what happened after that is they determined a crash didn't occur, and then their paperwork went to the prosecution and the defense. The defense didn't hire them to do the experiment. It was only afterward. So now you kind of know. So the jury is going to hear about this, but of course you can't say FBI. So Jackson kind of tries to work it in by saying like third party agency and things like that. But here we go. I'm going to get to the chat as I'm playing the first one, but let's go into the initial scope of this case and how he got involved, and then we will move on. And I'm getting to the chat now. So here we go.
When you were initially hired to look at the facts and circumstances of this case, did you do so independently? In other words, were you given a series of facts and a series of data and asked, just look at these facts and look at these data and make a few determinations about accident reconstruction in this case?
Yes.
What were you asked to do specifically?
It was to look at that evidence that we were provided and determine whether or not the damage to the vehicle was consistent with the injuries to Mr. John O'Keefe.
At the time that you were asked to engage in this independent analysis, were you provided information or data?
Yes.
Hi, Christy.
Who at ARCCA was assigned to the team that would ultimately engage in this particular analysis?
It was myself, Dr. Andrew Rentschler, and Scott Klein.
Describe what the materials were that you were provided in your initial assessment of this case.
Could I refer to my report?
With the court's permission.
Would you like me to just go in order from the materials reviewed?
That would be fine.
The
Laura.
Norfolk SPDU homicide death report, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of State Police crime scene report, OCME dispatch removal report, photographs of the incident location, videos of the incident location, photographs of the 2021 Lexus LX570, photographs of recovered evidence, crash data retrieval report from the 2021 Lexus LX570, report of autopsy photographs, and there was a few other items there, but those were generated internally.
There were about 14 things that were listed in terms of categories of information that you were provided, or ARCCA was provided. Is that right?
A little less than that, because some of those, like I said, were internally generated, but yes.
Why were you provided that data? What's the reason why it's important for you to get certain data as you begin your analysis?
Well, we wanted to have an understanding of, or ultimately the entity that retained us wanted to have an understanding of what, I guess, the evidence that we would need to reconstruct this.
So there you go. The agency that hired them provided them with photos, police reports, autopsy documents, the Lexus crash data to independently analyze whether the damage matched John O'Keefe's injuries. One observation that was important was that the damage was concentrated in the rear taillight. We already know that, the right rear taillight, but there was more to this. The deeper internal components to the taillight were shattered as well, which meant a substantial amount of force was involved. And we're going to get to that. It matters, right? So he's going to go over the composition of the taillight, but see how they're trying to work in that this was not a defense paid witness. Now, they did pay. And I don't think I included that in tonight's clips, but I think they said it was $50,000. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember everything. I have to remember a lot. So always try to help me out if you remember, but nothing even close to the $400,000 that the state paid for Aperture. But let's get into the composition.
What's important here is looking at what is the damage that we have to this taillight. What components were damaged in this alleged interaction? So we're looking at the clear diffuser at the bottom is fractured and missing. Same with the ones on the vertical side. The majority of the outer red lens is also missing and fractured. And then on the back side, we also have some damage in terms of some fracturing to that black plastic, and there's also a chunk of plastic missing on the top portion of the taillight as well.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about that diffuser. If you could focus your attention on this area. Describe for the jurors what they're looking at in terms of the diffuser. What is the diffuser?
Right, let me see if this. So the diffusers, right where my mouse is, there's a clear diffuser that runs along the bottom, and then there's another diffuser that runs along here, and then it also goes up vertically. Same here on the bottom one, that also goes up vertically. So this piece was missing and fractured on the bottom, along with the vertical portion. The chrome piece here you can see is also fractured and damaged, and then the kind of the second tier, if you will, that clear diffuser was also fractured and broken on the upper section as well.
Was that of significance to you in your review of the damage to the taillight?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because that tells me that we have to have enough force and energy to break, we talked about earlier that 5mm thick red outer lens. We have to have enough force to be able to get beyond that, to now start penetrating into the interior components of the taillight to get to, again, those clear diffusers and certainly cause damage to get induced out the back end of the taillight as well.
May I have just a moment?
Yes.
So we just learned, and I'm sure, this is like the third time I've seen this. It's probably the second time for some of you, which is fine. This is good. We can analyze. And yes, I did have a wonderful birthday. I forgot to show you. I got a little balloon. Oh, wait, you can't see it. Hold on. How cute. You're on another level. I got a little balloon. I was going to do something crazy. I might still do it, but I have to be really careful not to ruin anything in this room because my husband will kill me. But at the end, I was going to do something fun. We'll see. But we're now getting an idea of the composition of this taillight, which I think is important. There's a 5mm red thick acrylic lens on front. Then there's also these clear internal diffusers that are 3mm thick. And there's also some chrome elements in there. So there was damage to inner parts, which require a lot of force, significant force, more than a casual bump or a casual hit. And then he's talking about how there's two conflicting versions of how this accident occurred. And his role was to use physics and to look at the damage evidence and determine which was most in line with reality. Now, I don't know if you remember what the two were. One was, wasn't it like, did a glass hit the back? And the other one was, did the arm get hit? We're going to get into that. But the actual car, Karen's car, had significant damage. We've seen it. I mean, this is it right here on the screen. But her tailgate and her bumper, it didn't have much damage. I think he said there was like a small dent and a little bit of a chip in the paint. No bumper indentation. And that usually does appear when you have a higher speed pedestrian impact. I felt that was significant to note, but you're going to see actual reconstructions and the damage they produce. Oh, don't worry. I'm going to get into a lot of that. And he's also going to talk about glass. Dr. Wolfe was aware that glass fragments were found on the bumper, but he confirmed that the Lexus taillights contain no glass. They're made entirely of plastic and acrylic. So this raised a question. Was the damage from a body part or an object thrown at the back? Because remember, that's what they first thought, that a glass was like thrown at the back of the taillight. So Dr. Dr. Wolfe, Wolfe confirms there was a no shattered glass in or around the Lexus taillight, from the windows. Um, I was going to say something else, to the wall, never mind, to the body. And this contradicted the theory of a collision with John's drinking glass. And that didn't cause the damage. But let's move to this next part. I got some good clips for you.
This is a collection of photographs that depict various fragments from the right rear tail lamp assembly of the Lexus. And I will note that, and I'll try to spotlight it, there are a few fragments in this photograph that are glass fragments, which, as I discussed earlier, there's no glass in the taillight, so these did not originate from the assembly. But altogether, from what I recall, there's about 50 fragments, I believe, that were counted or so, maybe a little less than that from the right taillight.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So these are photographs depicting the sweatshirt or hoodie that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing on the night of the alleged incident.
And what was the role that this played in your analysis, ultimately?
Well, so one of the things that I noted, and I can go to the next slide, is there were a series of small punctures or holes in the sleeve, on the right sleeve of the sweatshirt in varying sizes. I think some as small as just a few millimeters. Again, I think there was maybe 10 or 12, I think I recall, on the right sleeve of that sweatshirt.
If we could go back to the larger photo, the previous slide, do you see the right sleeve denoted on the photograph to the right?
Yes.
Your review of these photographs, what was the significance of the triangular sort of arrows or markers?
I believe those were to annotate or draw attention to those holes.
Okay, the defects in the right sleeve?
Correct.
Can you count those for us, please?
9.
On the photograph on the right, I believe I see a total of 9.
And what about the photograph on the left, just the right sleeve area?
9 as well.
If we can go to the next slide. What are the arrows pointing to in these photographs?
So this is basically the previous shot, but what appears to be close-ups of some of those evidence markers.
You indicated some of the sizes. What were some of the smaller sizes of those defects or holes?
From what I recall, like I said, I think it was around 3 to 5 millimeters, maybe some of the smaller ones.
How big is 3 millimeters in inches?
It'd be probably around like an eighth of an inch or so.
Can we go to the next slide, please?
I am still so stumped by the holes in the sleeve. We're going to get to more evidence because I do think Brennan asked a lot of really good questions. So if you're a Brennan fan, great. I mean, these lawyers are good. They're good. Do I have problems with them sometimes? Yes. Both of them, all of them. Yeah, I do. But mostly Brennan. I'm not going to lie because sometimes he just comes off as a bully. But as you can see, there's these little holes that we've already seen many, many times. They're tiny. And something you don't know that I don't think I'm going to show this clip, but he made this cannon last time to simulate throwing a glass at 31 miles per hour and 37. And only the 37 mile per hour test caused significant damage. So that cannon, it had precise control of speed and aim. And it was replicating a forceful throw to see whether that could have created the damage that was on the taillight. So there were 9 different holes. This is going on to the sleeve again because I have ADHD, but I'm going back and forth. Now it's important because could the taillight have caused the damage to the shirt? Well, we're going to actually have tests. All of these tests were filmed with high speed video, and the damage patterns to both the glass and the taillight were preserved in detailed photographs and reports. So you're going to see this. Now, at 31 miles per hour, the glass cracked the light minimally. The damage was not consistent with what was found on Karen Reed's Lexus. And at 37 miles per hour, the taillight shattered, including those diffusers and the chrome housing. Why can't I speak tonight? The damage was generally consistent with Karen's taillight, but that's at 37 miles per hour. So this Canon, we were kind of introduced to this last time, but now we're getting a really interesting visual of everything. So let's look, because I thought this was interesting.
I'm handing you 2 photographs, or 2 8.5 by 11 documents that contain 2 photographs each. Can you take a look at those
Yes.
2 documents and tell me if you recognize those?
You're Brendan fans.
Yes.
Does one represent? You mentioned that one of the tests that you performed was at 37 miles an hour, correct?
Correct.
Did you mention that?
Last time there was a girl in here and she was mad at me because she was a Brennan fan. She's like, you didn't do enough of Brennan. And I was like, I really try my hardest to pick as many clips of both, unless it's just fluff. And then we're just listening to somebody already make a point we already heard. And he does repeat himself.
The speed at which, or the velocity at which the other test was done?
If I didn't, it was 31 miles per hour.
All right, so 31 and 37. Do you see those 2 documents in front of you?
Yes.
Does one of them represent the 31 mile an hour test and the photographs associated with that?
And an extracted frame from the high speed, yes.
Okay, and does the other one represent the other test, the 37 mile an hour test?
Yes.
If we could take those one at a time. May I approach one more time? Okay.
Fast forwarding a little bit.
Is this the photograph that was just marked as Exhibit 213 that's in front of you?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jurors what they're looking at?
So on the left part, you are looking at a frame from the high-speed video just after the contact with the taillight.
See the left? You're looking at a glass smashing into the taillight at high speed.
On the right, you're looking at the post-damage to the taillight after the glass had been fired into it.
And if we could look at the next exhibit with the court's permission.
Okay.
And what are we looking at here?
Same thing on the left. Again, this is the 37 mile an hour test. The glass striking just in the area where the bottom of the turn signal indicator is, so the right where it meets the red portion of the lens and the clear portion of the lens. That's about where the impact point was. You could see that a large portion of the outer red assembly, lens cover is missing and fractured. The clear portion of the part of the outer lens to the turn signal indicator is also fractured, as well as the underlying clear diffusers in that assembly.
Would your testing in both of these scenarios, the 31 mile an hour test and the 37 mile an hour test, represent an accepted methodology for controlling for aim, velocity, impact site, and those issues, if you will, as it relates to testing of this sort?
Yes, we were able to control those variables.
And is that an accepted methodology in the area or the field of accident reconstruction?
Absolutely, yes.
When you finished your testing, were you able to make a determination as to whether or not either one of these velocities, the 31 mile an hour velocity or the 37 mile an hour velocity, were consistent with the damage that you saw on the subject Lexus, which is the 2021 Lexus belonging to Ms. Reed?
Yes, from the 37 mile per hour test, we are getting damage that's generally consistent, and that I mentioned we have portions of the outer lens missing, the underlying diffuser. There was also some fracturing on the backside of the assembly. So again, we observed damage that was generally consistent with that of the subject taillight.
And that
So, did you hear what he said? You probably did. But he, in his opinion, the damage at 37 miles per hour, that was consistent with what it looked like on Karen's taillight. So, could a glass break the taillight like this? Yes, but only if it was going 37 plus miles per hour. So the conclusion is that no, a glass wasn't thrown and then broke the taillight. That was not, in his opinion, what happened. So I thought that was interesting. And then, oh, the head injuries. Let's just fast forward to that. Because he made a comment about that.
No.
Okay. So obviously, well, let me ask a different way. Based on this series of tests, were you concluding that the damage on the taillight conclusively was the product of a glass being hurled into the taillight?
Objection. Sustained.
Were you concluding, or did you opine, that the damage to the taillight came from a drinking glass?
No, I gave an opinion that the damage was generally consistent with that in the test, compared to the subject taillight.
But only in the circumstance where the glass is being hurled at 37 miles an hour, correct?
Sustained. Can I ask it differently?
Under what circumstance did you determine that it was consistent with a drinking glass?
If that drinking glass, again, the purpose of the test was to do a test to evaluate or simulating somebody throwing a drinking glass at the taillight. So that's what that test was to demonstrate.
Understood. Let's turn to another test that you undertook regarding the head injuries that you became aware of. Did you become aware of, in the data that you received, that Mr. O'Keefe had suffered head injuries to the back of his skull?
Yes.
What sort of testing did you do to determine whether or not and under what circumstances that head injury may be connected or associated with the damage to the taillight?
We performed a drop test with a hybrid 3, so that's an instrumented anthropomorphic test device to be able to measure the accelerations on a head form and observe the damage to an impact to the taillight.
What is an ATD, anthropomorphic test device?
So it's a device that's commonly used in our field, and it's certainly approved by the federal government to evaluate crash forces and occupant kinematics, or I should say occupant crash forces. So it's a device that reconstructionists and biomechanists typically use or commonly use to be able to evaluate, like I said, whether it's forces in a motor vehicle, or let's say you have something being dropped on somebody's head or an impact to somebody's body part, right? We can use that instrumented dummy to evaluate and measure the acceleration in the forces.
Another word or another phrase often used in association with ATD devices are crash test dummies, correct?
Correct, yes.
Crash test dummies. This one's name is Randy. We're going to be introduced to Randy in just a little bit. But he used a crash test dummy, and they tried to see if at 15 miles per hour the taillight caused the damage to and could fracture a skull. And Dr. Wolfe concluded that the impact of the head at or above 50 miles per hour is inconsistent with the actual injury, so it was ruled out. But I just wanted to kind of introduce you to the device they're going to be using. They also are going to use several replica or exemplar taillight lenses. They're also preconditioned to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is supposed to replicate the scene conditions because it was snowing. I thought that was very smart. This ensures that the accuracy and colder temperatures could match, and also they got their own exemplar 2021 Lexus LX 570. And also the ATD, or the crash test dummies. There's one. His name's Randy. We're not there yet. But first, he wants to talk about Welcher's test. You know, with the one with the arm in the odd position? Yeah, that one.
Describe what we're looking at in this slide.
This is from Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation, slide 121, in which he's indicating that there are lacerations on John O'Keefe's right arm and forearm. And he's indicating in this slide that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
In coming to your opinions and conclusions, and I know this is a mouthful, did you consider the opinions and conclusions of Dr. Welcher in conducting your analysis and your ultimate testing?
Remember, this was Dr. Welcher's opinion. I'm sorry that the captions are kind of hiding it. This is from Aperture. You can see it on the top left. So now you kind of get the context. The lacerations on John O'Keefe's right arm and forearm. And this is, he said, I can hardly read that. The location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent, his opinion, with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
Yes.
Did you rely on Dr. Welcher's report and his PowerPoint in reaching your conclusions and opinions ultimately in this case?
I don't know that I relied on it. Certainly, I utilized them to have an understanding of what his basis was for his opinion and what his opinion was. Ultimately, at ARCCA, we did our own independent testing to evaluate that.
So just to be clear, I'm not asking Dr. Wolfe if you agreed with his opinions and conclusions. I'm simply asking, did you rely on those in order to come to your opinions and conclusions? Did you incorporate them?
Sustained is to the
Did you agree ultimately with Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Sustained.
Sustain, sustain, sustain.
You certainly were aware of what his opinions and conclusions were, correct?
Before Mr. Jackson on that one.
Were you aware of Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
Are some of those opinions and conclusions represented in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Are some of them represented on this slide in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
You indicated that this slide indicates that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arms are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight, correct?
Correct.
Are the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm lacerations?
That would be an opinion for my colleague, Dr. Retrial.
Have you ever heard the phrase abrasion?
Yes.
In your opinion, are the injuries to John O'Keefe's right arm better described as lacerations or abrasions?
I don't have an opinion on that.
Okay.
He's not a doctor. He is, but not a medical doctor.
Slide number 2, please. And his data. What testing did Dr. Welcher undertake or conduct?
So he did, initially, it appeared that he did a static test, if you will, just demonstrating holding his right arm out adjacent to the rear taillights on the right side of an exemplar Lexus to demonstrate his theory of how the arm contacted the taillight.
What is a static test?
So I'm sustaining that. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson. And I'm going to strike that.
What? Why did you, what? What's a static test and he can't answer that?
What testing did you note that Dr. Welcher did with regard to
Oh, because he's calling it a static test and he, okay.
this particular photograph? What is a static test?
Well, in a static test, that neither the arm or the vehicle is moving. It's just he's aligning his right arm adjacent to show how his arm aligns to the geometry and the dimensions of the Lexus.
It's funny when we look at it that way. This test was static. It didn't go anywhere. He was positioning his arm and saying, look what happens. But if I put this glass right here and I'm like, oh, look, it hit my arm. Look at this on the table. And then I bend over. So it's silly when you look at it that way. It's not going to show you what's happening to the body, what the taillight's doing. It's just like, oh, can John's height account for where on the body he was hit if he was potentially struck? But now Dr. Wolfe is going to show you a couple of his own tests. We already know what the other tests look like.
What are tests A and B? What are those laboratory tests?
So these were the initial 2 tests that we did to get an idea of starting to test this hypothesis. As I mentioned, we weren't sure at 10 miles an hour what would happen to the taillight. We wanted to see what would happen at 17 miles an hour with the arm. So again, it was to evaluate from a starting point what happens in this interaction based upon how Dr. Welcher had his arm oriented in his PowerPoint analysis.
Next slide, please. What is this?
So you're looking at a photograph of our lab setup. You can see on the left side of that is our Hybrid 3 anthropomorphic test device. To the right is a linear impactor, and this is something we already have in-house that we built years ago for.
Is this so high tech? I think it is. Some of the stuff we have in our studio, I mean, like the camera that faces down and some of the lighting and whatnot, but this other stuff is crazy.
Our testing that we do for the National Hockey League when we're looking at, what's the accelerations on an impact to a goalie wearing a helmet, right? We use this same device for that type of testing to measure head acceleration. So we applied this same linear impactor to be able to project, if you will, or accelerate the taillight at a known speed into the ATD arm.
What are some of the instrumentation that you use in addition to the mechanical impactor? What's some of the instrumentation you use to track the data?
Certainly. So you can see, I'll get my, see what I have here. So at the top here, there's a blue camera here. There's another blue camera here. So these are our high-speed cameras. And you'll see there's a bunch of lights around those high speeds. That's just because the frame rate's so high. And again, it's only sampling a very, very short amount of time. So you have to have a lot of light when you do these high-speed tests. So we have the high-speed cameras running. We have an accelerometer mounted to the ATD arm here on the other side. So that's some of the instrumentation. There's also a couple other cameras that we're documenting this overall.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these photographs?
So this is looking at, and not to be confused, this wasn't the arm position when the impact occurred. This is just showing you the setup. So on the left is just kind of an overall shot, and then on the right here is a uniaxial accelerometer. So that's going to measure, we talked about that term earlier, right, the acceleration. So that's going to measure how quickly is this arm changing its speed, right? What's the acceleration of the arm as it's impacted?
Does that accelerometer put into motion some of the mathematical formulations that you talked about earlier?
Yes.
Let's move to the next slide, please. Tell me about these photographs.
So the importance of this is, more specifically looking at the right photograph here, might be a little bit hard to see, but we wanted to get the same exact sweatshirt or hoodie for the testing to evaluate if the taillight breaks, is there a mechanism for the fragments to penetrate and cause holes in the sweatshirt as were observed in Mr. John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Next slide. Were you successful in finding the exact replica sweatshirt?
Yes, and I will note, as I mentioned, I know it probably is hard to see, but the material blend on the sleeves are the exact same. They are 60% cotton and 40% polyester.
So here we are. They've got the high speed cameras. They've got the cotton and polyester hoodie to match. They've got this exemplar dummy arm that they're going to test, and they're going to impact it at different speeds. I think it was 10 miles per hour and 17. What this is doing is, instead of the 2 mile an hour standing there, glass out, arm in a weird position that Welcher did, where the car is going like, into him and he kind of moves, this is going to just be able to measure in a very succinct way how much force it takes to make certain damage or what the damage would be at certain miles per hour by concentrating on something going fast and moving towards the arm. Does that make sense? Now we're going to see it. And when you see it, it'll make a lot more sense to you. But I accidentally went too far. So let's go back really quick. Oh, that's where I wanted it. Wait. Sorry. Kimbyr. Here we go.
Next slide, please.
So you were looking at a camera that is mounted above the entire setup.
You're going to see lots of different viewpoints, which is really good because I'm very visual. So I'm like, oh, we're looking at it from the top. We can see the impactor. We can see the arm. Then we're going to see it from the side.
If you look at the top portion of this video, you will see the taillight. Part of it's covered by the high-speed camera. But what will happen is the linear impactor will fire, and the taillight will be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour, striking the clothed ATD arm.
With the court's permission,
Okay?
let's go ahead and play the video. Next slide, please. What is this?
So this is also a video, but with the high-speed camera. So it's the high-speed camera that's looking top down at the arm. So you will see, when the video plays, you will see the taillight enter from the left and contact the arm. And I will note that this is essentially slow mode, so it's not happening in real time. So you'll see the taillight slowly moving, but it's actually in reality moving at 10 miles per hour.
Understood. Go ahead and play that.
I thought this was so interesting. I like weird tests like this. Wait, Cuff, what were you saying? Something about the hoodie conversation? You have two grown sons that say it's LOL plural. Please let me know what you're talking about because I want to know. Oh, that just looks bad.
Can I ask a question now that that's played? How did you mount the taillight to the accelerator, that linear accelerator?
Right, so we had to get a little bit creative there because you may have observed this when we had the physical assembly out earlier. The back of that, it's not some nice...
So do you see the simulation? This is supposed to be the car backing out at 10 miles per hour. What is the damage of the taillight? Minimal. The hoodie had no puncture marks, and Dr. Wolfe concluded that 10 miles per hour is not consistent with the damage seen on John O'Keefe's sweatshirt or on the taillight. So now we're going to go to 17 miles per hour. It's after lunch, I guess, or this. We have a little time. Here we go.
What was different about 35 pursuant to your notes?
This is slide 36.
36, got it. Okay. We could be a little bit more brief, I think, because is this similar to the 10 mile an hour test just with increased velocity?
Correct.
Okay. What about the purple hued taillight on the right? What is that?
So again, that is a thermal image depicting the temperature profile of the right taillight that was tested.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to note that the average temperature profile of the taillight here in this test was approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that below freezing?
It is, yes.
And the ATD, the test dummy, if you will,
Yes.
is it also clothed?
Correct, yes. With a, you may know.
Jackson, really? Is he clothed? I don't know. Are there people listening that aren't watching? He has a shirt on, sir.
Notice a difference in the sweatshirt color. We put on a new sweatshirt in this test.
Was it also
So they're always going to use a new sweatshirt and a new taillight, just so you know.
an exact replica of the sweatshirt at issue worn by John O'Keefe? I'll ask it a different way. How did it compare to the sweatshirt that was worn by John O'Keefe?
It was made by the same company and had the same material blend as the previous test and the one that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So this will be a video. You will see, much like you did in the other one, where the taillight will be accelerated up to 17 miles an hour, impact the arm. And one of the things you'll see is actually an artifact of the test, if you will, where the taillight, due to the fact that the impactor stops at the end of the stroke, that force actually causes it to decouple from that polyurethane foam that we use to adhere the two.
What do you mean by decouple? What does that mean?
So, as I mentioned, it once the linear impactor reaches the end of its stroke, it stops instantaneously, and the force of that stop just caused, where we adhered the two together, just caused it to detach, basically break away. So, in essence, it doesn't matter because we only care about.
So I wanted to point this out because Marie brought it up. She said, well, what if the arm was bent? I wish they'd show that. Well, they don't need to prove what position anything was in because they aren't here to prove this aspect because they don't believe this happened. So why they're showing it in this position is because they're refuting the argument from the state. Their theory is that his arm was holding a glass cup and that Karen's SUV hit him in that stance. So that's why you're seeing it this way. I know it's kind of a little bit annoying because there's a lot of different ways the body could be, which is one of Dr. Wolfe's points later, is that we're doing this because this is your theory, state. So Brendan's going to get to that. Brendan's going to challenge him about why he's only doing this. And he's like, why? Because Dr. Welcher did this. This is him saying that this was the way the lacerations, the cuts on the sleeve, and John O'Keefe died. So that's why they're only showing it like this. I know it's a little bit frustrating, but that's what we get.
About that, remember we're talking about that short duration of time, that 10 milliseconds. So once it breaks, it's already reached a common velocity to the taillight.
Okay. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, please?
And Megan said, they don't really know what angle his arm was in, so why not test all angles? That's not the defense's job. That was a question for the state. They should have tested a lot of things, right? But I see that and I'm like, y'all, did that not shatter? This whole time, my jaw was like, because this whole time I haven't been able to visualize any impact, not 17 miles per hour, but like I have not visualized the taillight breaking. And when I saw this, my immediate thought was if I was on the jury, I'd be like, whoa, so it can break.
About this impact.
So one of the things you'll see is kind of that dust cloud that you see. Again, that's all the particulates from the expanding foam that we use. So that's kind of what you see in the background there, kind of going over kind of the arm and the taillight there.
Do you note more damage or less damage to the taillight at 17 miles an hour versus the 10 mile an hour test?
There is more damage, yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So you're looking at a top-down view from the high-speed camera. You'll see the taillight enter from the left, impacting the arm at about 17 miles per hour.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Can you describe the decoupling that's shown here?
Yeah, it just fell off because this isn't the way a taillight is mounted. Yes, we understand, and the debris and whatnot. But to me, when I saw this, and you can tell me how you feel, I was like, wow, I mean, it can break. But we're going to see it in a different view because that's important. There's still no damage to those diffusers or to the hoodie. So this speed is still inconsistent for the level of destruction that was in Karen's taillight.
Absolutely. So as you can see where the two are basically married together, right? It's kind of actually coming back together now. So that bond that we had, right? This is the most effective way that we could mount it to the impactor. It just became detached due to the force of that impactor stopping at the end of the stroke.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So in this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just a side view Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct, not real time.
Okay. What do you note in terms of the deflection on the...
I mean, in my point of view, and this is just me being devil's advocate, like many of you in the comments have said, we don't know what position his arm, body, if this even happened. I lean towards, I don't know. I still haven't really been convinced. I'm not really sure. But it shows that it can damage the taillight. And what if there was a different position? What if the glass, I don't know. I guess they just showed that the glass can only break it at 37, so maybe not. I'm just trying, my brain's working. My brain's working when I see this.
The arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving now at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you note about the damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10-mile-an-hour test, which, again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video just showing right at contact, during contact, and post-contact.
Next slide, please. What is this?
So now that we can see it in a different perspective, it doesn't have as much damage. It looked like a big impact. But then when you look, you're like, oh, but again, we don't know the positioning. What if it was a little over more? So I feel like the jurors are probably thinking the same thing.
Photograph of?
This photograph is depicting the damage to the taillight at the conclusion of the test, where, again, it's missing fragments of the outer red lens. I will note that the interior diffusers and plastic components are intact in this test.
So it's not consistent. It's still not consistent. Now he's going to explain the whole vehicle impact setup that they created. They used a suspended arm, and this was based on Welcher's diagrams. I'm letting you know that because like before, they're emulating what he said happened. That's all. They're not conducting their own test. They already did their own test. This is something different. This is to refute Welcher's theory because that's the state's argument. So this is to observe the interaction at controlled speeds with high-speed cameras again and sensors, and you're going to see this. It's different. So let's take a look.
Did you conduct additional tests other than the 2 lab tests that we've talked about?
Yes, sir.
Describe just in general, and then we'll talk in more specifics. What were the tests that you undertook after the lab tests?
So we conducted 2 tests with a suspended ATD arm that was impacted by an exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570. We then conducted a test where the arm was then attached to a test dummy, and then our final test was a full-on impact to a test dummy.
So you're going to see those. But like he said, first we're going to do the arm again. We're going to do just the arm. It's going to be suspended. And now a car, the same one as Karen's, is going to back up at different speeds.
Can we go to slide 48, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
This is the exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570 that was utilized during this test program.
Was this the same vehicle that was utilized in all the tests, C, D, E, and F?
Correct, yes.
If we could go to slide 49, the next slide. What's depicted in this photograph?
Well, so there's a number of things here, so I'll try to point them all out. So obviously, we talked about just now the Lexus here, the exemplar vehicle.
I like his little highlighting circle. As a visual person, I really like that.
We have a forklift that was hoisted up that ultimately was suspending the arm. I think I have an additional photograph that shows it close up. But the arm was suspended from the forklift at the correct height to interact with the taillight. We have our high-speed cameras set up under this umbrella. There's another one over here. Another thing you'll note is we brought out the chest freezer when we were installing these in the Lexus to, again, keep them at that steady state temperature for as long as possible.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the approximate position that we plan to have contact occur in these tests. So as you can see, the forearm is in contact with the liftgate and the quarter panel taillight along with the elbow.
Why did you choose this configuration for the arm, the
He's going to explain the arm position.
forearm, the hand, the elbow?
It was based upon my review of Dr. Welcher's work and that he did through his static and dynamic test or paint test that this is how the arm was roughly oriented when the alleged contact occurred.
What were you trying to replicate in positioning the arm this direction, this way, as it relates to the SUV?
Well, I think as I stated earlier, it was to understand, okay, let's get beyond just simple geometry aligning things. What happens to the arm, right? What are the accelerations? What's the damage, right? We want to answer some of those other questions that Dr. Welcher didn't answer.
Does this...
So I'm going to strike the last part of it.
Yeah, that was sustained because he's saying Dr. Welcher didn't answer it. And there was a sidebar.
Yeah.
15.
I want to get to this actual...
You may see, so when we look, the things you actually may see in this photograph on the left are these pellets on the ground, and that is due to the fact during the installation process, one of my colleagues was positioned adjacent to the taillight fixtures, applying a compress of dry ice to help.
So that's dry ice.
Right from, you could see
Here we go.
See it accelerate.
Sorry, I'm fast forwarding it a little.
Dr. Wolfe, is that in real time or slowed down, sped up?
This is in real time.
Okay. Next video, please. What is this?
This is a camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Is this a still shot or is it a video?
It's a video.
What is the orientation of that arm as it relates to the vehicle that we'll see?
So it will make contact with the taillight, although I will note in this test, ultimately the contact ended up being more of a clip or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead.
Oh. Okay. So he is emphasizing the goal, which is to go beyond the simple alignment test, like Welcher was doing, and determine a real world physical outcome, damage, acceleration, and force. So they're doing these studies first at 15 miles per hour, which we just saw, and the taillight was preconditioned, meaning it was frozen with dry ice or made cold at 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's that to emulate or mimic the temperature outside. When I first saw this, though, I'm just going to tell you, I was like, I was like, is that the most accurate way to do this? I am not an accident expert, but it seemed chaotic. It seemed like not like a real body because it's not attached. But don't worry, we will get there with the dummy, if you will. But there was also the drone footage you saw from above, the Lexus reversing into the suspended arm, and the impact was a side swipe in his opinion. So only the wrist and forearm made contact. And he calls it a clip. And remember, that's important because the state used that same word, side swipe. But this was only 15 miles per hour. Aside from the arm, we're looking at the impact of the taillight. So let's see that.
Did you see the impact area?
It's quick.
Right. What did you mean when you said more of a side swipe or a clip?
So I think the next couple videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? Or, I'm sorry, in this photograph.
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left. And you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay.
That's very similar to what Dr. Welcher said would happen, right? He was like, my arm would hit and I would turn. Okay. So let's see the damage. Because that looks very accurate to how Dr. Welcher said it would happen.
Can you explain for the jurors using this video what you meant by more of a side swipe or a clip?
Right. So this is where the hand and the wrist are kind of in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with,
Yep.
I'm sorry, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand in contact with the liftgate portion of the taillight, and then on the forearm is more in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Okay. Can we move to the next slide? And what is this angle?
This is
We're going to skip because I want you to see the impact to the actual taillight, and there's nothing happened. So there was no damage to the taillight, and there was no damage, or not damage to the arm, but there was no damage. We're looking at what it's going to do to this car. What's the car taillight going to look like? So then they move on. They move to 29 miles per hour. And I was like, wow, okay. That would be 5 miles faster, right? Than what they said Karen was going. So look at that.
What was the speed that you undertook in test D as in Delta?
I cuff. I totally understood what you were saying. Yes, the mannequin shirt is really good. John put that one up there too.
So this is a 29 mile per hour impact into the suspended hybrid arm.
We move to the next slide.
Same conditions as before. They're making it cold.
What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So on the left is my colleague, again, compressing the taillight while we install the the liftgate taillight to, again, try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right is the thermal image of the taillight after the install. So the average temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is a drone video showing a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the
We're finally going to see a Lexus going 29 miles per hour. I was like, this is going to be interesting.
forklift.
Okay, if we can watch this video, please.
The arm fell off, I think. That's fast.
Do your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm, so you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolfe, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking over that.
Sorry, I
That's
didn't.
okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack.
Who's driving that car? Don't say Karen Reed. But who's driving that car?
It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference.
That's so fast. See, when I'm seeing this, if I were a juror, I'd be like, I don't know if someone could be going that fast out of like on a random street and not swerve out of control. And like this person who's ever driving this, I feel like he had to do so much to keep it in that spot.
As we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
That's
Thank you.
fast.
What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
So let's fast forward a little bit. I want to see the damage. That's what I'm caring about the most. Okay, here we go. This is where I was like, my jaw was on the floor.
Effective than the previous video.
Okay.
What? I was like, wait a minute. That's pretty shattered. I mean, you can see it's fracturing that outer red shell. That's why my thumbnail says like, was this a crash and burn for the crash daddies?
Next slide. And what do we?
But notice how the positioning, as we know, that's not their choice. The other part of the taillight's breaking a lot, but not the outer part. But maybe that's because if this really did happen this way, that's not how John O'Keefe was standing. That's a theory from the state. But I was like, wow, they're showing way too much of a car hitting an arm the way that the state is saying it happened, and there is damage. Could it have busted like that? Because to me, I'm like, depending on the way John was positioned, couldn't the taillight have broken the way that the state said it did? But wait, because this is why you have to listen to everything, okay?
Looking at here?
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, the majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15, yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car?
Sustained.
I know a lot of people are kind of not liking this part of the trial for some reason. And I'm thinking this is the most important part in a lot of ways. So I feel like we're not getting as many people watching this or being here for this one. Also because maybe some people are mad because there's a lot of memes going around right now that show Like, the tail light broke, the tail light broke. And I'm like, well, it kind of did, but you have to listen to
Is this
everything.
consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welch's report?
Sustained. Can I ask you differently?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29-mile-an-hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please.
So here you have the damage. Okay, fine. It's concentrated on the other part of the tail light, but again, that might just be direction. It doesn't have as much damage as what Karen Reed's had.
What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
Also, the diffusers were still intact.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5mm.
And we didn't see any damage on that part of Karen's car. So that's interesting because that looks like it would have been thinner or have a higher likelihood of breaking, and we didn't see anything there.
Red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
So he concluded again that this wasn't consistent. And then we go to the next part, which is where we get into the crash test dummies, which I was waiting for because this is a whole body. I think that's more realistic. I don't know if you would agree, but they also have it at 24 miles per hour, which is the exact speed the state says Karen was going. The dummy's clothed in the same hoodie to see if there's any damage to the sleeve that happens. And he's also in the same shoes and jeans.
Test E, 24-mile-an-hour impact test. What is that?
So this is a 24-mile-an-hour impact test to the ATD arm attached to a test dummy.
Next slide, please. Why did you utilize 24 miles an hour for this test?
So it's my understanding that this is the upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2, and I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the...
I don't know if Courtney's here today. I thought I saw her in the chat. She's so busy and it's so late. I'm sorry I went so late today. I had to do a lot with 2 videos going out, answering comments, making sure everything was okay. So I'm a little late today.
The end point, if you will, in that data set.
But I feel like she would have a lot to say about this. I was like, where's Courtney? I know she's going to have an opinion on this.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please.
I'm like, let's get to the accident.
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please.
Okay, let's see it. Still fast. Wait, is he still doing the arm? I
Next
thought we were
slide.
doing the body. I know we
What are
are.
we looking at in this slide?
So this is a top-down video from atop of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended, attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into going to the top of the screen.
Kind of wish they would have let him
Next
fly
slide.
wherever he would have landed.
What is this view?
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video where you'll see the Lexus in reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build-up before it starts here.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, this is slow-mo. I was like, what? Why is it going so slow? Okay. I was like, wait a minute. Didn't it just shatter? Didn't it just explode like that? To me, I was almost like, the jury has so many thoughts right now.
And could we go to the next slide, please?
Look at all the debris. I'm trying to do the math. I'm like, okay, Say he was there. His body flew, but then how would he get in that position?
And what is this?
So this is a perspective from the high-speed camera, so a slow
Watch
motion
this
video
part.
with the Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolfe, I failed to ask this. It may be obvious. After each of the tests had been
Yes, that's a new one.
As well as liftgate
He was going to
taillights.
ask, is it a new everything? Yes, we already went over that. It's a new light. It's a new shirt.
And even in the test where the taillight in the 50-mile-an-hour test where the taillight was not damaged, we still put on new taillights. We did not repurpose or reuse any of the taillights.
Okay, thank you. If you could play this for us, please.
Here we go. This is where all the memes have been coming from. Look at that. That's why I thought Courtney would be like, I told you it broke. But I mean, it is shattering. And in my opinion, if I was just, look, I am a layperson. I am not an expert in this. I don't know physics the way that this person does, obviously. But Wolfe says that, yes, the taillight cracked. The liftgate taillight is intact this time. The diffuser had minor damage, but he still concluded it is less than Karen's Lexus. The hoodie didn't even have any holes in it. It didn't have frays. It didn't have any damage. But at the least, I feel like a jury would be like, so it can explode into all those pieces. Because it's almost like this whole time we've been thinking that's impossible, but now we're seeing it can happen. What are your thoughts?
Next slide. In this configuration, was the ATD outfitted with the hoodie that you earlier described?
Yes.
At the time you outfitted the ATD with the hoodie in this configuration before this test E, did you confirm that the sleeve, the right sleeve, was damaged or undamaged?
After this test?
No, before.
Before, it was undamaged before the test.
Okay. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is still frames from the high speed. So starting out on the left here, just at contact. So the
Still don't understand how it could have had holes in it.
four making contact on.
Fast forwarding a
What
little
are we
bit.
looking at
There's
in
the
this video,
damage.
or in this picture?
So this is a overall photograph depicting the taillights subsequent to this test at 24 miles per hour. I will note that there's no damage to the liftgate taillight, and then there is damage to the quarter panel taillight.
Is there any damage to the internal diffusers on this taillight?
So if I go to the next photograph, if I may.
Please.
So you can see here there is this kind of thicker, it's actually not a crack. So I'm looking at the clear diffuser here with the dots that you see. This line that you see, kind of opaque. I don't know if you've got a laser pointer,
Yes.
just so there's no confusion. Thank you. So the line right here that's part of the assembly. So that's just a part of how the plastic is molded. There's a very small crack right here in the underlying diffuser, but all of the remaining part of the diffuser in terms of this portion here and here are all intact, and same with this portion of it.
What about the chrome piece that's running between the diffusers?
I don't believe that was damaged during this test, no.
And what about the clear acrylic toward the top left of that taillight housing?
It was partially fractured, but not the entire outer portion.
So just for good measure, they're going to do it at 29 miles per hour because they're like, you know what? We're going to go up to 29, see what happens. I was waiting for this test. I just wanted to see for myself as well. Don't worry. We have a few more to get through. Definitely going to hear from Brennan. Somebody already said they didn't like his cross at all. I think he made some really good points, but I think the most important thing, and I hear this so many times where someone has an opinion and I'm like, but did you listen to the rebuttal? And did you listen to when the person came back? And did you listen to how Jackson came and asked Wolfe about that? So you have to kind of listen to everything. That's what we're supposed to do as jurors, right? As a 13th juror.
As opposed to a side swipe on the arm.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Did you undertake to test a direct impact on the body of the ATD in this test?
Of the Rescue Randy dummy?
Yes.
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the intended impact configuration with the Rescue Randy suspended here by the forklift, and again, kind of in the path of the profile at that right rear corner.
How much does this test dummy weigh?
Approximately 200 pounds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a video. We had a little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video.
I was disappointed about this. I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of picky about things. And Brendan definitely brought this up, and I was like, yep, I would have too. I gotta give him credit for that. You didn't record this one? It wasn't work. How could that happen? And I'm like, you should have redone it. You should have redone it. But I don't know if they had enough materials to redo it. I don't know, because the car, wait till you see what happens to the car. So they couldn't have replicated it because, ugh. But what a mistake not to have things triggered.
Video of the test taking place.
Do you have, or did, well, let me ask you, did you intend to have high-speed video just like you've had in every other test?
Yes.
What went wrong? Something
Just
didn't get
miscommunication between the driver and the rest of the test engineers.
Got it.
So false start.
Okay. Was the taillight housing reassembled for this test?
Yes, it had a preconditioned new set of taillights on it.
And other than the taillight being damaged several times that we've seen, was there any other damage to the rear of that exemplar vehicle?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Other than the taillight damage that you rotated through in your testing, C through F, was there any other inherent damage to the the lift gate that existed when the exemplar vehicle was received by you?
When it was received, no, it was
Okay.
in good condition. No defects or damage were noted.
Okay. What are we going to expect to see in this video?
So in this video, you'll see in the surveillance video, the Lexus will come from the right to left, strike the rescue Randy, and then you'll see the rescue Randy projected and slide on the ground.
Okay.
That's so fast.
Can you play that one more time, please?
Just to be fair, I have it on 1.25, but it doesn't matter because if you're on regular speed, same.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So this is a extract from our VBox software and data acquisition system. So on the top, you'll see the video. On the bottom is the data. So
Lindsay made a good point. I've watched every minute of both trials, and for as many good questions Brendan had, there are twice as many better points by the defense. Agreed. But I think it's important to, point out what we see.
Feed that we had a video. This was triggered, so we do have data from this perspective. So what you'll see is my colleague will move away from the assembly with the dry ice, and then the vehicle will accelerate in reverse.
That was my question. The blue.
Gosh, they better be careful doing these experiments. I can see something going wrong, a freak accident. Morbid mind.
That's dry ice gloves.
You don't want to touch dry ice with your bare hands. So it's, he's wearing gloves.
I'm going to be watching tonight with the baby. That's the only time I have to do it.
He's capturing the thermal images now.
What a great team, though. Imagine this was your job. What'd you do, honey? Oh, I just crashed into things all day. But to be fair, these guys are like PhDs, right? It's like you paid your dues. Oh, poor Randy.
Next slide, please. And what are we looking at in this?
So these
Wait till you see what happens here if you haven't seen this.
are extracted frames from that video you just saw from the data acquisition system. So on the left here is just before contact between the test dummy and the Lexus. On the right is just at contact.
I know. Makeup with Nana. I hope I'm saying that right. My head spinning. Think of the jury. Their head's probably spinning too. They can only watch this one time, so they can't rewind and see it again. It's like whatever happens in this moment, whatever they think about is what they leave with.
Next slide, please.
Look at that.
And what are we seeing in these series of photos?
So this is obviously during the collision sequence. The body now has loaded into the lift gate and the back window. What you're seeing here is the back window shattering.
Wow.
And this is just a few split second later in time
Wow.
where, again, the body is continuing to move.
Well, what does this show? Well, look, the back window is completely shattered at that speed. Plus, there's going to be damage to the vehicle. That's why they couldn't replicate this again. That's why they couldn't use the exemplar Lexus after this.
Move with the vehicle as it's contacted.
Next slide. And what is this?
Look at the damage.
This depicts the post-impact damage to the rear of the Lexus. As I noted, the
The difference here, in case you missed it, is that the vehicle's now hitting him almost in the center, like his full body, not a side swipe, but almost a different position, if you will. And we're getting massive damage, different from what we saw before. So that's important.
Rear window is completely shattered. There's deformation and crush to the liftgate section of the vehicle. The bumper step was popped out, and then there was some minor fracturing in the bumper cover at the lower level.
Did you note anything regarding the internal components of the exemplar taillight, even at this direct impact?
Wow, look at that.
So the taillight, as you can see, it blew out the outer lens cover. I believe the part of the clear diffusers were actually still in place. I think the lower one might have been fractured here, but I think the upper one was still in place.
Still, the right side of the taillight isn't even touched.
At 29 miles an hour with a direct impact, did the exemplar taillight exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
More or less damage in this photo to the diffuser specifically than in the subject taillight?
Well, I think there was more in the subject taillight. As I mentioned, I believe the top diffuser
More
on this
damage?
Correct.
Okay. That was my question.
So, in his opinion, I almost feel like, well, we'll get to Brendan. We'll get to Brendan. But in his opinion, he still holds the view to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that this didn't happen. The damage right here is more extensive. And somebody brought it up in the comments. What about broken bones? Like, at these speeds, you would see something break if this is how you're being hit. The crash test dummy flew off. But let's get to Brennan. Only to be fair, of course, we're showing both sides. And again, I think that, in my opinion, this was his best cross-examination. So I don't know if that's a positive or negative. Some of the questions he said didn't make sense. I think he was trying to outsmart Dr. Wolfe, but it didn't really work. But he brought up some good points. And you know why? Because the jury is only there once. I've watched it 3 times. He's challenging him first about his credentials. So the jury's going to hear this and they're going to remember it and they're going to remember the answers. And he's going to ask all kinds of questions to kind of make it look bad when the outcome isn't even bad if the answer is yes. Does that make sense? Probably not, but that's my point. He confuses the jury sometimes. But I wasn't prepared to see this part. Remember Burgess? He had so many issues with the CV. Well, I guess this was Brennan's attempt to undermine Dr. Wolfe to make it look like, oh, look, your guy's bad too. My guy only made a mistake, but your guy made a mistake. It's just like the whole back and forth.
All right, Mr. Brennan.
Good afternoon, Dr.
The judge. All right, Mr. Brennan.
Wolfe.
Good afternoon.
When you testified in direct, you shared with the jury some of the work that ARCCA does. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you had mentioned a couple interesting things, that there had been some work with the Department of Defense.
Correct. Yes.
The work with the Department of Defense, was that during your time or before you got there?
That would have been prior to my employment. Yes.
So when you were telling them about working with the Department of Defense, that really had nothing to do with you. That was ARCCA before you began working there.
ARCCA as a whole, yes. The work that we do, yes.
It's like, okay, well, if you work somewhere, you're going to say we worked with the Department of Defense. You didn't say like I did specifically. So I really didn't think these points made a big deal. But again, he has to.
Not you.
As I said, I wasn't involved specifically in that project, no.
And you mentioned that you did some stuff, or the company does some things for the NHL.
Yes.
You didn't tell us much more about what you do. There's other things that ARCCA does as far as clients, right?
Certainly.
Did you share with us that you work for lawyers and law firms?
Yes, we do.
And you do litigation, insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason why you highlight
He's bringing up the insurance company because last time the jurors thought that ARCCA might have been hired by an insurance company.
the Department of Defense that you don't do, and the NHL, but didn't share the rest of the stuff with us?
That's just some of the prominent clients that we have.
I see. You provided us a CV, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's like a resume, tell us a little bit about your education experience. You get to highlight some of the things, your accomplishments.
Yes.
You shared with us you've been the director of accident reconstruction at this company, ARCCA, since 2017.
No, not since I started.
You started with ARCCA in 2017.
Correct, yes.
When did you become the director of accident reconstruction?
I think that would have been in January of 2024, so about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago?
Yes.
And you received your certification from ACDAR.
Yes.
Did you pass the test on both parts first
Oh, this was so petty. I was like, oh, Brendan's being petty.
time?
I don't,
Look at his
don't
face.
recall if it, I think it was I had to retake, I think, the practical section in the afternoon.
Well, you would recall something like that, wouldn't you? Did you pass both parts on the first try?
Like I said, I think it was the second part I had to retake.
Well, this is a pretty important test, isn't it?
Not
It's a pretty important test, isn't it? He's like smirking.
really.
It's your certification.
It is, but much of the concepts that are covered in it are very elementary.
Then why didn't you pass, right?
Not so elementary. You had a hard time with part of it, didn't you?
Well, with respect to the portion that I had to retake, it's a practical exam where you have to reconstruct an accident. You have to determine approach angles, departure angles, and it can be very sensitive to those inputs. And unfortunately, if you mess up one of your first angles and you carry out that calculation, then the whole problem is graded wrong, even if you did all of the math correct.
I thought this was a really great question by Brendan, though, because remember we talked about the fact that if Burgess got one mathematical equation wrong, right, then everything would be wrong going forward. So I think Brendan bringing this up is really important because, like he just said, he, in his own words, said, well, if I got one angle wrong, then everything else would be graded wrong, even if I did the math correct. So it's like, well, that was one of the arguments about our witnesses is that they get things wrong and then the whole thing's wrong. So I did think this was good, although I think it's kind of petty and I don't think in the grand scheme of things it really mattered.
So we understand there's a multiple choice question part. That's the easier part, correct?
I don't know if it's easier, but there is a multiple choice part.
There's a more practical part where you actually have to go out in the field and do assessments, kind of like the things that you did today.
You don't go out into the field, no.
And, when did you first take that second part that you didn't pass?
Brandon's speaking low again. He's saying, oh, well, you didn't do good on the practical part. That's the part that actually matters. You did well on the multiple choice. But what he's saying is you can't actually do the work. You failed the certification doing the work. And it was a good argument.
I don't recall.
You don't remember when you took the test?
No, I don't.
Suffice to say, you took it again,
Correct.
and ultimately you passed both sections of that test?
Yes.
You can take the bar exam multiple times. Remember my cousin Vinny?
In your CV, you list your schooling, and you list your degrees, don't you?
Yes.
You mentioned some of the things that you focused on in your academic experience, don't you?
Yes.
And you have publications.
Correct.
Recently, you did a publication regarding vehicle control history on Toyotas.
Correct.
Vehicle control history is data that is stored in a vehicle,
Yes.
and Toyota owns Lexus, correct?
Correct.
So you have familiarity with vehicle control history. In fact, you have a publication on it.
Yes.
In your entire resume, you only mention pedestrian collisions or that you're involved in pedestrian-type events 3 times. Is there anything specific in your resume or your publications that show a published accomplishment, for example, in pedestrian collisions? Do you have any publications that have been peer-reviewed or published in that area?
No, I don't have any publications in pedestrians.
So, what can the jury think? I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I mean, he is challenging him, right? He's saying, oh, you don't have any pedestrian impact specific peer reviewed articles. Could be a point that the jury thinks is important. Now he's going to challenge him on the relationship with the defense because remember, the defense can't say, oh, the FBI hired ARCCA in the beginning. They can't say that. So now Brennan has to get creative and try to figure out a way to like show that he's really defense focused and that he wanted to help the defense.
You were asked questions about your involvement in this case. Yes?
Yes.
And you had shared with us that
I don't know why it's blurry.
you, at the beginning, were working for a separate party or a third party, you said?
Yes, another agency.
Another.
Point.
And at some point, you came into court and testified last year.
Yes.
Can you imagine if Dr. Wolfe was like, at least it didn't take me 17 years to get my bachelor's degree. Oh, and he doesn't have it yet, talking about Burgess. That would be really mean.
And during the time before you came in and testified, you weren't wholly independent of the defense, were you?
Well, certainly before all of our testing, at the point at which we did all of our testing, report, and analysis, as I mentioned on direct, I didn't know the Commonwealth or the defense in this case.
My question, more precisely, before you testified, before you came into court and gave your testimony, you weren't totally independent from the defense, were you?
No, I mean, I had to communicate with them to be able to determine when to appear for testimony.
So you were communicating with them, yes?
Yes.
And in fact, some of the time that you spent, ARCCA actually billed the defense for, and they paid that bill, didn't they?
Eventually after the trial, yes.
During that time, you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
So this is where he's going to get into the deleting of the text messages. He had to bring this in, that over 100 text messages were exchanged with him and the defense. And apparently the court had ordered them to be turned over, but he had already deleted them because I think it had been a year.
Yes.
Do you think that you're under a sequestration order today?
Yes.
Did you talk to anybody about any of the prior testimony in this case before today?
No.
How'd you get here today?
How did I get here today? I took a car ride over from the hotel.
Who drove you?
It was a driver. I don't know his name.
Who set up the car?
It would have been someone on the defense team.
Was it like a window, like a limo?
It was an SUV.
Remember the limo thing with Dr. Russell? So he's just trying to see, like, were you talking? Are you friends with the defense?
Was there anybody from the defense with you on the ride over?
Got to look at the closed captions because he's being so silent.
There were 3 young ladies in the back seat. I think they might have been interns, and Mr. Woke.
And who?
Mr. Wolke, I think it's pronounced. Am I saying it wrong?
Have you discussed anything about this case before your testimony today as far as the trial?
Before today?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you discussed anybody's testimony in this case?
Nobody's testimony, no.
That was different last year, though, because before you testified last year, you did have discussions about testimony, didn't you?
Not with the Commonwealth or the defense, no.
But I'm asking, though, you did have discussions about testimony before you testified last year, right?
Correct, yes.
And you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
He already said yes.
After
Is he going to show the text messages? I think it's in the next clip. Hold on.
you testified last year, the court ordered you to
Here it
provide
is.
all of your text messages, all your communications with the defense, didn't they?
Yes, earlier this year.
And when you were ordered to provide all of the actual verbatim communications with the defense, did you provide those communications?
Yes, all of the records that I had at the time I provided.
Well, not the records. You know what I'm getting at. Did you provide the communications?
I provided everything I had in my possession, sir.
A text message isn't just a time and date. It's actually substance when you text somebody, isn't there?
Correct.
And when you texted, how many texts do you think you had with the defense?
From what I recall, I think it was around 50 texts that I sent.
It wasn't 100, I think it was 50.
Well, I think it was around 100 total in terms of back and forth, but it was, I think, 50 that I sent.
And during those texts, communications, conversations, correct?
About logistics, yes.
Did you provide the content of those text messages when you were ordered to by the court?
Well, those text messages spanned from, I guess it would have been April or so of 2024 through May to June of 2024. Ultimately, I think I received the court's order in May of this year, April of this year. So it was a year after the fact, and I had already deleted the text at that point.
How many of those text messages did you delete?
I just swiped the conversation, so it would have been the whole conversation.
Not how you did.
And then he also went into Signal. He's like, oh, you were using Signal. So you were hiding things with Signal. And he was, I don't know. I mean, could they just use Signal because it was encrypted? I never thought that argument was that significant. But then he brings up this whole, oh, you said at the previous trial, which he calls the previous hearing, that you testified as an expert 20 times. What happened was he went back, he counted it. It was 11 trials and 7 depositions. So it was like right under 20. It was like he was 2 off. But Brennan tries to make a point about this. Oh, did you try to correct it? He's like, no, I told the defense and it was up to them what they wanted to do. So now he goes into confirmation bias and things like that. So let's listen to this.
Do you ever heard the terms confirmation bias?
Yes.
Do you know what confirmation bias is generally?
Generally, yes.
Do you think that you suffer from any confirmation bias in this case?
No.
Do you you have any close family that supports one side over the other? Not the facts of the data, but one side over the other.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Wife?
My wife?
Yes.
How dare you? I was like, oh my gosh, he's really going to go here?
I don't really know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
Apparently his wife, according to what I did research on the side, is in a free Karen Reed group online. But like, honestly, John and I sometimes have opposing views on things. Maybe it's because her husband is working on the defense case right now that she's supportive. I don't know, but you're going to see. He's like, do I have to go home? Yell him, not that he yells at his wife, but I think his breathing right there was funny to me. I was trying to look at that. It looks like some kind of conversation because I see somebody's profile picture.
Take a look at that document. Have you seen that before?
No, I have not.
Never seen that.
So because he had never seen it, it didn't come in. The judge was like, nope, we're not going to be having high drama today. So moving on, we're almost done. We have like 4 or 5 left. And I know a lot of you don't want to hear from Brennan, and that's fine. But we do have to hear what's going on. This next part, we're going to hear about the testing. And he's going to be challenged on a lot of this. Specifically, I think we're going to get into the hoodie.
So when you came in and testified last time, you weren't considering all of the other evidence that may not support that theory, were you?
I think our objective was to determine whether or not the damage was consistent with an interaction with Mr. John O'Keefe, and could there be another mechanism to cause the tail light to break.
Is there a reason why you were backing off that opinion on direct examination today?
Sustained.
You weren't fully embracing that theory today, were you?
I'm going to allow that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
In this case, you provided reports recently.
Yes.
When did you provide your report? Was it April 6th?
April 6th?
Or was it May 6th?
I think it's May 7th,
May
if I'm not
7th.
mistaken.
So you provided a report May 7th, yes?
Correct.
And do you know when this trial started?
You know why he's asking this question? Because of Burgess. He's trying to show the jury, look, everyone has new reports.
Early April?
But what's not ever stated, and Jackson or Alessi has to come back and say, well, didn't you have to do a new report because Burgess turned in a new report?
Provide your PowerPoint. When did you provide your PowerPoint?
I think it would have been Thursday of this week.
Well, it wasn't last night.
Sorry, maybe Wednesday. Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday. Is that fair?
Yes.
In looking at pedestrian accidents, it's important to try, if you can, understand the exact positioning of the body, isn't it?
This is the point somebody was making. Sure, this is really important, but your witnesses didn't do that, Brennan.
If a collision occurred, yes.
And if a collision occurred, you can't always identify the exact position of the body, can you?
No, oftentimes it can be very difficult, yes.
You would want to know if it is a collision between a car and a pedestrian, whether the person was fully impacted or it was a clipping type incident. Wouldn't you want to know that if you could?
That would certainly affect the trajectory, yes.
And you would want to know, if you could, the body posture, whether the person was standing up straight or crouching.
If a collision occurred, yes.
Whether
I like how he keeps saying, if a collision occurred.
they were turning or standing straight or they had their arm out. That's helpful information, isn't it?
It can be, but when we're talking about how quickly this impact duration is, right, if you recall back to the PowerPoint, right, we're talking about a 10 millisecond window. So however the body is positioned at contact, that's how it's positioned. It's not going to be able to have any significant movement or change in orientation in that 10 millisecond window.
The position of the body can change the trajectory of the person who's hit, can it?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The positioning of the body, the way they're positioned, that can change the trajectory if they're hit after they hit. Can it?
It can, yes.
Whether they're moving towards the vehicle or away from it could affect the trajectory, couldn't it?
If they have some relative velocity, yeah.
Trying to determine the point of impact when you're looking at a scene, it's important when you do trajectory studies to know where the point of impact is, isn't it?
If you're going to utilize studies that look at projection of pedestrians when you're contacted at the center of gravity and you get projected some distance, you can rely on those studies, but you have to have an understanding of where the point of impact is and where the point of rest is.
Dr. Wolfe doesn't think an accident occurred. So it doesn't matter what position John O'Keefe was in, and it doesn't matter what position he put the dummy in. Because remember, Welcher was the one that put it in that position. However, this next point right here, it was actually good on Brennan. I'm just going to say, I was like, guys, what were you thinking? Are you ready for this?
When you decided to choose an arm in this case, you didn't choose the arm closest to his weight, did you?
It was representative enough, yes.
It was representative enough.
It was close enough, yes, sir.
Close enough. Wouldn't you want to get an arm most closely related to his actual weight?
I don't know that you can have custom-made ATDs.
But you probably can't custom make them, but they have one that's 12 pounds. You know that, don't you?
Are you referring to the 95th percentile?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So there's a 12-pound arm. Mr. O'Keefe's is 11.86 according to the statistics. You know that, right?
Yes.
You looked it up.
Yes.
You didn't tell us that on direct, though, did you?
I don't believe I was asked that.
No. Instead of choosing the 12-pound arm, which is 0.12 difference, you chose a much lesser weight, didn't you?
It was about 10 pounds, yes.
No.
Why? I do have to criticize here because I'm like, why would you choose an arm that was less weight? I mean, at least try to be as accurate as possible. I understand what he's going to say, that it's not going to really make a difference. But to the jurors who don't study this, I'm guessing none of them are accident reconstructionists. To me, I was like, why'd you do that? Why did you give any wiggle room here?
It wasn't about 10 pounds. It was less than 10 pounds. Let's be exact. You're a scientist. Let's be as precise as possible when we're talking about data. It was less than 10 pounds, wasn't it?
I think
It was 9.38.
according to the spec sheet, I think it's 9.4 pounds total.
How about 9.38? You keep coming up a little bit. 9.38 pounds.
Sustain in that point.
May I approach?
Yes.
So he's going to say, oh, it's 26.3% weight difference. And why didn't you disclose that in your PowerPoint? He's like, a lighter arm is going to skew the force and the damage calculations. Unless you take the speed and adjust them downward. And of course, Wolfe is like, no, that's not how it works. That's not what would happen. The mass difference wouldn't significantly impact the damage. But to a juror, like somebody like me, somebody that's not a scientist, maybe like, yeah, why didn't you use one closer in weight? But Brennan's going to say, now you have to reduce everything by 26%. And to me, I was like, that's going a little too far. But again, the jury may see it differently. And then Brendan's going to point out that the test video, the dummy arm is tethered to a stand. But Wolfe is going to be like, yeah, that simulates a real impact. But you'll hear him.
Showing you a photograph. Is that a photograph of your materials in this case?
Yes.
And in that photograph, it shows the arm that you used in your studies, doesn't it?
Correct.
And it shows that that arm weighs 9.38 pounds, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that is less than the 11.86 pounds of Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes?
Correct, yes.
You didn't put that photograph in your PowerPoint to make it clear to everybody you were using an arm that was a much lesser weight, were you?
No, I didn't put that photograph.
I'd like to move this to evidence, please.
Okay. Any objection, Mr. Jackson?
you are. Thank you. For permission, I'd like to show this to the jury. This is the arm that you used in all of your videos, right?
Correct, yes.
And you can see, could you zoom in, Ms. Gilman, on the weight? 9.38 pounds.
Yes.
There's a bigger difference between 9.38 and 11.86 than there is 12 and 11.86, isn't there?
Correct, yes.
So when you do the math, and have you done the math before on this? When you do the math,
He's like, I think I
it's
did the math.
26% difference, isn't it?
In terms of more force,
No, of mass, weight, 26% difference,
Okay.
right?
I'm going to trust you. Yeah,
Well, do you have a calculator?
I do.
Can you do it?
Sure.
Okay. And before you do that, you took this from Mr. O'Keefe's 6'1". You used a crash test dummy what is the height on it?
Well, the ATD, I believe, is 5'7". The Rescue Randy, I think, is 6 feet tall.
We'll talk about the Rescue Randy later. We have questions about Randy. But let's talk about
We'll
this.
talk about Rescue Randy later. Okay, here's the part I didn't like.
Just ask a question.
An hour, that's going to overcome whatever the 29-mile-an-hour impact test. That's significantly more kinetic energy. So the momentum of a 6,000-pound vehicle moving at 24 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, that's going to overcome whatever the mass is that it's hitting at that point.
You're sidestepping my question.
You're s you're sidestepping my question. And they were like, "Objection." So, I thought that these little comments were not necessary because he's already doing a good job challenging the testimony. You don't need to challenge the person because then it comes off as you're a bully. Now, Brennan is going to talk about how real bodies are not suspended and that the force in this vehicle cannot actually be replicated the right way.
Sustained. Ask a question, Mr. Brennan. Just ask a question, no more
My
comments.
question is, are you telling us that having a lighter arm does not impact the damage in these tests as opposed to using the heavier arm?
Certainly not in the field test, no.
And so you disagree that when you look at the weights of those arms, do you disagree there's a 26.3% difference?
Yes.
You disagree.
No, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Do you agree there was a 26.3% difference in the arm weight that you used opposed to John O'Keefe?
Yes, the hybrid arm compared to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes.
And you are denying that there needs to be an adjustment to your calculation because the mass, MA, is different. You're denying that.
I think, again, if you're, and this is something Dr. Rentschler, I believe, will
No, I want
touch
to talk
on.
to you. I don't want to talk to Dr. Rentschler.
Well, because when you're
He's like, I don't want to talk to Dr. Rentschler.
addressing the forces for injury and the mechanisms for injury, right, you would account for the difference in the weight.
So you're saying that it makes no difference that you use an arm that was 26% lighter. Is that what you're saying to us?
No, I don't think it would have made a significant difference, especially if you look at, for instance, if you're looking at the 95th percentile hand and the 50th percentile hand, they both weigh 1.25 pounds. They're the
Okay, we're going to get to this part.
We can move to test B, please.
I thought
Now,
this was kind of
test B,
interesting.
a similar test. It has the same limitations, doesn't it? This dummy is restrained at the pelvis.
Yes.
Could you show the video, please? There's two videos. We can see the first one. And was the dummy restrained by its head as well?
Yes.
Was its arm restrained in any way?
It was tethered, but it was free to move.
This test you have is 17 miles per hour with the arm that's 9.38 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, 11.86 pound arm. If you consider that 26% difference, wouldn't it be fair to say that this test, rather than replicate 17 miles per hour, would actually replicate 12.6 miles per hour?
He wants it to be less miles per hour so it shows more damage. So he's like, no, you see, this would only be 12, not 17. I don't think Dr. Wolfe's going for this at all.
No, can you answer that?
Not the way it's phrased, no.
And so looking at this test, test B, which you say is 17 miles per hour, can you do a calculation for the 26% difference, or is that something that you don't think is fair?
I don't think that'd be a fair way to characterize it. Again, if no matter what the mass is there, if you're accelerating it, if you're impacting at 17, that arm is going to move at 17.
Well, not just the movement, the damage. If this arm was 5 pounds, do you think the test would have the same exact result?
If it's 5 pounds,
Yes,
probably would be less damage.
it'd be less damage. So to get this amount of damage, you would have to increase the weight, right?
Sorry, what was your question?
To get this amount of damage, you couldn't use a 5 pound arm. There would be less damage with the 5 pound arm.
You just contradicted yourself, Brendan, because you're like, oh, for more damage, you would need a heavier arm. So, yeah, okay. But he wants to reduce but add at the same time, in my opinion. So he's confusing. He's very confusing.
Correct.
Right, because the less weight you use, the less damage at that speed. That's
Correct.
basically how it works.
Correct.
Correct. But almost 10 pounds and 12 pounds is different than using a 5-pound arm.
Okay. So, in this test, if we could run that back again, you have a restrained dummy at the hips and the head. There's no follow-through of the light or the body that's attached to that arm, correct?
Yeah, he's saying this is unnatural. It's not going to move the way a body does. It's suspended. It's not there the way that a body would be, which I agree with. I said that. I was like, oh, are these really accurate tests? But remember what they're trying to test.
And at this speed, you can see the shards of taillight.
He's calling that shards of taillight. Now, remember, that is debris from like that cushion that's on there. Sure, I see some pieces of taillight flying around. Remember, he wants to say these shards because that what was found in the debris in the clothing.
You can see them move, can't you?
And apparently the jurors from the last trial thought it was okay enough that there were shards in the clothing. So it made them think that there was a correlation.
When you say move, you mean
Not stationary.
yeah, I mean, they're moving from the taillight as they break.
Detached from the taillight.
Correct, they're broken.
That could create a debris field, yes?
Yes.
And you can see them floating in the air, some of them actually floating and then touching the sweater. Do you see that?
See that one? That's, you can't see my pointer, but there's one touching the hoodie right now. Still, that could not have caused the damage, but see, he's trying to get in the juror's mind. So I think it's a good argument.
Possibly some of it might be against some of that polyurethane foam.
Yeah, some might be. And why don't we play it again so we can see clearly? Some might be taillight shards too, right?
Yeah. But they're not going to cause damage to that hoodie.
That black object spinning, that's not poly foam, is it?
No, it would not be.
That'd be taillight shard, right?
Correct.
And so even at this speed, you can see in this type of collision, there is significant, bless you, significant amount of taillight shards that are broken from the taillight and spewing into the air, yes?
Well, I think on one of the slides I had, I think I showed the fragments that were left. And from what I recall, I think there was 4 pieces from the taillight, from the lens.
If you could put that back a little so Dr. Wolfe can see it again, to the point of the collision.
He's going to show him again. It's like, we get it. Yes, there's a few pieces
Even
coming
at this
off.
speed, go ahead. Stop. You can see pieces, large, small, medium, maybe microscopic.
Well, if they're microscopic, you would need to have a microscope, Brennan. I hate to be picky.
Are now breaking off from that taillight and being littered into the air, aren't they?
Yes, there are pieces coming off.
So did that convince you? Maybe to some people that could have been very convincing. And now we're going to get to, I think we're getting to rescue Randy. And we're going to talk about the 2 tests they did. I think it was the 15 mile per hour and the 17 miles per hour. And what are your thoughts on this? We have 3 to go.
And so the body and the weight of the body, you're saying, has nothing to do with the amount of damage.
Not in these tests, no.
So when somebody gets hit, does the body weight have anything to do with the damage? Not just the area that gets hit. Does the body weight affect it at all?
Not in terms of the impact. Like the rest of the body, it's not going to matter if, for instance, only my hand, like in that last test we just saw, it was the hand and the wrist. How much my stomach weighs, my head weighs, is not going to affect the damage to that taillight in that interaction.
And by the way, this test, you said 15 miles per hour. If you consider the 26%, you're only at 11.1 miles per hour.
He's going to keep doing that when that's not how we're going to be calculating this. He's really into this 26%. I understand the argument, and I think it can be good if the jury is confused at this point.
Is that the right math?
Again, I don't agree with that, because if you look at the data and you integrate the acceleration data to get the speed, right, that we saw in those plots, the hand basically gets up to, I think it was 14 or 15 miles an hour. It reaches that common velocity of the vehicle.
Let's go to test F. On test F, you placed the dummy more behind the vehicle, didn't you?
Correct.
And when you test and you put it more behind the vehicle, this is more of a full impact than it is a clipping, isn't it?
Certainly, yes.
And when you put this dummy behind the car, this was not a legitimate crash test dummy. It was a different type of dummy, wasn't it?
Yes, it's called a Rescue Randy.
A Rescue Randy. And that is not typically the type of dummy that you're going to use for crash tests, is it?
I wouldn't agree with that.
When you did the Rescue Randy and crash test F, did you use the 12-pound arm or did you stick with the 9.38?
The hybrid arm wasn't attached to the Rescue Randy.
The hybrid arm was not. Is that what you said, or it was?
It was not. No, not in the full impact test.
Okay, so what was the weight of the arm on the Rescue Randy?
I don't know specifically the weight of the arm. I know that the total mass of the Rescue Randy was 200 pounds.
Isn't the weight of the arm important when you're talking about impact with the arm?
I don't think relative to the rest of the mass of the body.
So now the mass of the body counts, but before it didn't.
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
Okay. If we can see in test F, we have some photographs.
Okay, let's see the photographs
Is
again.
this simply a photo or a video? Could we go to the next one, please? So the Rescue Randy's placed much further in the car than the other type of test that would be more similar to a clip, yes?
Correct.
Next photo, please. Okay. And that is the result of the impact.
Correct.
Do you see the debris field?
Yes.
This was interesting because I didn't really get to focus on this view, but you can see if you look to the front of Rescue Randy, there is a debris field of red and probably clear, but I just can't see it, but taillight fragments all along the road.
Is it near rescue, Randy?
Some of it is, yes.
Yeah, it's spread out a little bit, yes?
That's fair, yes.
But it's not right on his body. It's a distance from his body, yes?
There may be some, I can't tell from this photo, there may be some around his body, but yeah.
I mean, this is a great visual. Whether or not you hate Brennan, I'm just saying for the jury to see that and say, okay, wait. So if he got hit, her car backed up, smashed the taillight, some of the fragments were scattered away from his body, some were near his body. You can see this as plausible. That was my argument about this was probably Brennan's best cross because visually I could see jurors thinking that.
Yes, there's also debris close to the Lexus as well.
And and this is the demonstration where you didn't turn on the videotape, so we don't have a videotape?
Correct, we had the false start, yep.
What's that?
We had the false start.
The false start. Is there another picture after this?
He really, really wanted to focus on this. And I see why. There's holes in the clothing. Interesting. But there's also dirt. There's also, a road burn, road rash. Is that what they call it?
Those clothes. Are there holes or tears in the clothes?
Yes, there's damage that's consistent with road rash when clothing or a body makes contact with the pavement and is grinding into the pavement.
Pavement's hard.
Yes.
How about frozen ground, frozen dirt?
Is that hard?
Yeah.
I suppose it can be.
Well, do you have any doubt whether frozen ground in the Northeast in the winter is hard?
I would argue, and I'm not from somewhere where it snows and has really frozen ground, but a road is doing that because of the texture, not the hardness. So I don't see a grassy area doing this to someone's sleeve.
Hard as a rock?
I haven't done any analysis to assess that.
And so seeing holes in those clothes is what you would expect after Randy hits that hard ground, right?
Are you talking about frozen grass or pavement?
I'm talking about Randy right now. These
Talking about Randy right now. No, he's asking a valid question.
holes in the clothes are what you would expect after Randy hits the hard ground, correct?
I'm going to allow that. Is that what you'd expect? All right, jurors, feel free to stand up.
They had to come back again because there was a sidebar about it. They come back.
These on hard ground, like a front yard, have you?
In terms of a pedestrian sliding on the grass?
In clothing tears, yes.
No, sir.
So there's his point. You haven't done studies on whether someone's sliding against frozen grass. Maybe the shards of grass. No one thought of that. The shards of grass are frozen. He slides across and the glass fragment, grass, not glass, grass fragments get into his shirt. I mean, the way he's saying it, could a juror be imagining it? Sure. Is it what happened? Probably not.
So the rescue Randy's placed much further in the car.
Oh, we already saw that. Well, I think we only have one left. Oh, here, this is important for him.
Yes.
Okay. I want you to go back, Ms. Gilman, please, to the point of impact. In your studies, you would agree there can be a clip of a pedestrian that causes significant damage to a taillight where the pedestrian incurs no lower body injuries whatsoever. That can happen, can it?
Well, I don't know that I would describe this as a clip to the arm. This is a full-on impact to the arm, so it's not a clip. Again, you saw it the 15 miles per hour. I think that's more analogous to a clip or a side swipe where the arm just kind of gets brushed out of the way. This, I would say, is a full-on impact to the arm.
Okay. To use your words, in a full-on impact like this, a pedestrian could be involved in a full-on impact causing that amount of damage to the taillight that's reflected in this video, but suffer no lower body injuries. Isn't that fair to say?
I don't address injuries, sir.
Well, let's play it forward. Do we ever see Randy's knees hit the car?
It's a good argument. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. It's a good argument. If you're looking at this visual as a juror, you only have one chance to look at it. I don't know if they're going to be able to have any of these in deliberation. I don't know. But you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, look, his knee, his hip, his stomach, none of that got hit, just the arm. But then Brendan's not bringing up the point. His arm wasn't broken though. If most of the force hit his arm, wouldn't it have been broken? So again, it's like he's focusing, but he's not asking the questions that we're probably asking. By the way, he did ask one important question. I don't think I played it. He said, you didn't take into consideration that skin is different than a crash test dummy. And I was like, that's actually a good point. And there was a whole write up on how you shouldn't use crash test dummies to emulate certain kind of injuries to people's body. And we're going to hear about that with another doctor that's going to testify, I believe. But I was like, true, because our skin's different. It's elastic, it's softer. Sure, it could impact differently through the fabric because it's not hitting a hard plastic arm. So that does make a lot of sense to me.
Hips, ribs.
I see the foot getting run over, but I don't think there was contact with the legs, no.
Would you agree that a pedestrian could be in this type of collision and suffer no lower body injuries based on your presentation here?
Sir, I don't address injuries. Biomechanics is not my area of specialty.
You said it's common in vehicle pedestrian collisions that there's some type of bumper displacement. Have you
Correct.
said that?
Yes.
Okay, bring it back to the beginning, please. Stop. Any bumper displacement in this collision?
In this specific test, no.
You said that on direct you would expect that there would be some panel deformation. What does that mean?
So if for instance, let's say the hand is not contacting the taillight or a portion of it is contacting the liftgate, you could see deformation to that body paneling.
You said that you would expect to see, not that you could. What you said on direct is you would expect to see panel deformation.
Yes.
And you said in this case there was none, right? Talking about the defendant's Lexus. You said, I would expect to see panel deformation, and in this case, the defendant's Lexus, there was none. That's what you told us on direct.
Correct.
Let's watch Let's watch your video. Play it ahead.
Okay. I'm a little confused on this
panel
one.
deformation. Stop. In this.
No, sir.
Okay. So when you said
Right. He's getting at, look, there could be no damage to the bumper, a lot of damage to the taillight. Still not as significant though, because it didn't break the diffusers. But I see his point, and I think that some jurors could look at this and be like, yeah, and then he fell out of the sneaker. But my brain is saying, how did he land in the position he landed in though? How did he get there?
on direct examination relative to the defendant's Lexus, you would expect panel deformation. There was none. There are examples, one that you gave us yourself, where there is a collision causing this amount of damage to a taillight where there's no panel deformation.
I'm going to allow it.
Right?
If I recall, I think you're referring to my prior testimony in another proceeding
Oh, interesting.
where I had not conducted this testing yet. So ultimately, that's part of the reason why this testing was conducted, to evaluate that.
In this case, the damage to the right rear taillight, there's no panel deformation here, is there?
Correct. There's not.
So Jackson's going to come back. We have 2 clips. I promise there's 2 left. I think they're important to watch. So I am going to play them. And it's interesting because he's going to come back. He's going to explain some of the issues that were on cross. For one, they talk about the debris and the arm moving at the same speed, the same velocity, which means the shards couldn't outrun the arm. They couldn't puncture the sleeve. And that made sense to me. I was like, oh, right. Because everything's flowing at the same speed. Like, how would it penetrate? That would have to be opposite forces. Anyway, it made sense to me. Let me fast forward. Jackson?
Do you have your PowerPoint
Yes.
set up?
Your Honor, may I?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I? Remember? He's like, Your Honor, may I look at my laptop? Good point. Dr. Angelique said, Randy does do a pirouette. Pirouette. I can't say pirouette. 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 I always want to say pirouette. He does, just like Trooper Paul said, huh? So. Oh my gosh, let's go.
go forward, and I don't have them memorized, so bear with me. Can you go forward to test E?
Let's go to test E.
Next slide. The next. The next. Can you, is this a video or is this a still photograph?
It is a video.
Is this at full speed or is this slow?
This is full speed.
Okay, can you go to the next slide? Okay, go back one.
Jackson.
This is a test at what speed?
This is the Lexus moving in reverse, contacting at 24 miles an hour.
All right. Let's go ahead and play this at full speed if we could.
He does
Dr. Wolfe,
spin.
can you, that's awfully fast. Can you
Try
get
to-
to a point where you're moving frame by frame just at the point of contact?
No emotional support laptop.
I missed it.
Okay. It may be more difficult than we thought. Let me ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
based on that. Did you review that video in slow motion as well as at full speed?
Yes, from a frame-by-frame perspective.
And in terms of a couple of different questions about that particular test, when there's impact with that right arm, what's the speed that the arm gets to upon impact?
In test E,
Right. If the car's going 24 miles an hour,
Wouldn't it be 24?
expected speed of the arm.
so the hand got up to a little over 24, the arm got a little over 21 miles per hour.
Okay.
The debris that comes off of the taillight, the fragments, what speed would they be going at the point of impact when they crack and are released from the taillight?
Right.
At the impact speed or less.
In order to penetrate the sweatshirt and cut the arm across, would the shards have to be going faster or slower than the arm?
They would have to be going faster. If they're moving at a common velocity with the arm relative to it, they would somehow have to accelerate with more speed to catch up and go beyond the arm, essentially.
Is that physically possible?
No.
So that ends that. Because it's like, no, it's not possible.
You were asked on cross-examination about some of the work that ARCCA does on behalf of private lawyers, even insurance companies, correct?
Correct.
You were not hired by an insurance company. That's not who hired you on behalf of Ms. Reed or anything like that in the initial hire, correct?
Correct. It was not an insurance company.
Thank you.
That was important, remember, because the jury from the last trial thought that the insurance company had hired them.
More questions, if it's okay with the court, Your Honor, before we break?
Okay.
Thank you.
He only has a couple more. And yes, Cuff, I love thunderstorms. The deodorant I'm wearing right now is called Thunderstorm. Yeah, it's actually really good. It does kind of remind me of a thunderstorm.
You were asked several questions about the glass and whether or not the glass weighed in on your analysis of the damage to the rear taillight, correct?
Correct.
Did you consider that the glass on the rear bumper did not match the cocktail glass that was found close to John O'Keefe's body? Or were you aware of that?
I don't think initially I was aware that there was a difference between the glass cup that was found and the glass on the bumper.
You were asked a lot of questions about the difference in the weight of the arm, and I'm going by memory, 11.8 pounds.
I'm going to answer some of the questions afterward for the people who have to be on the replay and didn't see their questions answered.
Statistically, as it relates to Mr. O'Keefe versus 9.4 pounds, have I got that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Are you aware that anybody has ever measured the weight of just John O'Keefe's right arm?
I'm not aware of that, no.
When you were asked questions about whether or not his arm weighed 11.8 pounds, are you aware of anybody ever weighing just his arm?
No.
What is that based on? 11.8, where did that come from?
I don't know.
Mr. Brennan mentioned the word statistic. Based on the statistics, his arm would weigh that much. Height, weight, etc.
Correct.
Does a statistic determine the actual weight of an arm?
No, not conclusive to what Mr. O'Keefe's arm weighed, no.
As you sit here, do you know whether his arm, John O'Keefe's right arm, if weighed by itself accurately, because pounds and apparently half pounds matter, if it weighed 11.8 pounds or if it weighed 9.4 pounds? Do you know?
I don't know, no.
Do you believe that your testing, the totality of your testing, was dependent upon those 2.5 pounds based on the weight of the hybrid 3, or at least the armored hybrid 3, and the statistic of 11.8 pounds.
Sustained.
So he's addressing the arm weight again. No one actually weighed John O'Keefe's arm. How would you even do that? I mean, would you have to, sorry to be morbid, like disconnect it from his body at autopsy and then weigh it? It was a statistic. That's all it was. It wasn't a fact. So Dr. Wolfe is still saying the speed of the car dictates the damage, not the arm weight. And that's where Brendan was getting everything confused. So it's so important for Jackson to come back, circle back, make sure we're understanding everything, because you can get caught up in it and you can start thinking and your brain can be like, I don't know. But that's why I like to show, yes, it was a good argument by Brendan, but it's also good for Jackson to circle back and explain it.
In what way does that make a difference in terms of, is that differentiation of 2.5 pounds or approximately 2.5 pounds, in what way does that make a difference in terms of your testing?
It doesn't, and that's part of the reason why we increase the speeds to almost 30 miles an hour to look at, again, when you're bringing that much more kinetic energy from the vehicle, that's going to overcome any mass that that arm has. If it, like I said, if it's a pound difference, 2 pound difference, the momentum of that vehicle moving at 30 miles an hour versus 24 miles an hour, again, kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times the mass times the velocity squared. So even if you go up a few miles per hour, you're exponentially increasing that amount of kinetic energy from the vehicle.
I thought these were good arguments. I want to know your thoughts. I am going to answer some of the comments. It's getting kind of late, so I made a few favorites here. And again, give me your thoughts. And if you're on the replay, put a comment there. I will go read them and answer. Teresa said, I love this shirt. Do you guys ever consider tank tops? I'm bad at collars, also in Florida. You know, I didn't think about it because it's kind of chilly here in LA all the time. I'm always in a jacket. But let me go back to full screen. Now that you said it, I'm going to do tank tops. I'm so sorry that we didn't think of that. I don't know why we didn't think of that. But I was making shirts today and I was thinking, I don't even like wearing shirts. I wear, like you'll see, I have tank tops underneath, but then I wear a jacket. So yes, Teresa, thank you for that. And then Sheila had mentioned videos on both channels. Yes, please give my other channel some love, even if you listen to it when you go to bed or something. The algorithm has not been favoring our other channels. It's really sad. There's so much AI, guys. Like, it is so sad. And we just have to keep going, you know, and hopefully things will get better. But right now, the algorithm is just, you know, not favoring human beings. Marie said, Kimber, hold on a second, I can't read this for some reason. Kimber, I saw a video on Twitter that's not related to this case, but showed a car driving slowish and a person in front of it walking with it the way that he went down, maybe made you think of this case. Yes, please send that to me in the comments because we can't do links on the chat, but I'm very interested to see that. Marie also mentioned that Karen walks out of court answering all the media's questions. I'm not sure I've seen that to that extent before. I don't know. It's this celebrity status thing. I have noticed that. I don't know how I feel about it. I think people should always be low key. I think you should keep your head down and let things play out. I think it can come off kind of cocky, I guess you could say. Cuff said, this day's crazy, and I think Brennan lost his mind today. You have to show the Bev doing her thing with the witness. You know what I mean? Was that today, like day 29? Because I'm not there yet, but let me know. Cuff also said, I bought 4 shirts in 4 days, and I need the It's Never a Man Again shipment shirt. Yes, that one's really, really cool. That's a new style that just came out. Don't forget to support us with your merch because, like I just said, algorithm not supporting our channel, but it's okay. We'll come back from it. I know we will. And you know what? The most loyal people are going to watch our videos still, and that's really important. Dr. Angelique said, I feel like there's so much speculation and variables regarding the hypothesis of the car strike that it is possible, yes, but likely that it's a bite of a dog. Lindsay said, my thoughts, 29 miles per hour in reverse is incredibly fast, especially with a Jeep parked in front of the mailbox. Good point that wasn't exactly brought up. Catherine said, I'm super confused why, if he got hit, how he doesn't have any sort of bruising on his arm. Good point. Graceful said, I never thought it was impossible that the taillight couldn't break. I still think it's impossible that the arm is not broken in multiple places. True. Makeup with Anna said, so fast she hit him without seeing. WTF? No body damages or any bruises? What the hell? Yeah, I know. It doesn't really make sense. It really doesn't make sense. And I'm still confused. Michaela said John would only move with the car at the impact, then pushed with the force of the car's speed. That's what I was thinking. Like, how would he end up where he was? That's kind of the confusing part. Makeup with Nana said, I follow all three channels. Dark Livity was the first one I was told about by my sister. That's so cool to know that our smaller channel, which just hit 90,000 subscribers, like I was like almost in tears. That's so amazing. We're so close to 100,000. And I'm so proud because that's going to be my husband's silver play button. I already have one of my own for my channel. So I'm really hoping for his birthday we would get to 100,000, but that's August 21st. But if you keep sharing and liking the videos, I'm sure that we could possibly get 10 more thousand in a couple months, but we're just happy that y'all are here with us. And Dr. Angelique said, yeah, what if she does reverse fast, almost hits him? He goes into the house and says, she almost hit me. And then the other scenario happens. Could be. Michaela said, John would have more broken bones. Makeup with Nana said, then I found your other channel. That's so cool. I'm really glad we always promote the other ones to give them a little love. Because really, my husband and I work on Dark Livity, so we split that channel. So it's like both of us working on it. I work on mine alone. It's a lot, but he does a lot for me. He does all my audio to fix my audio for my main channel. So if you ever think it sounds like really crisp and clear and beautiful, that's John. So you can give him credit for that. But I'm really sleepy tonight. I'm not going to lie. I'm really trying to do these lives earlier. So I apologize this one was so late. I had to film today. I had to do some other work today. I had to wash my hair today. And I've been loving my new Kitsch bar shampoo and conditioner. I linked them below because I've been skeptical about it and I finally like was going to bite the bullet and did it, and I've been using it for a while now, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how much space it frees up in my shower and just how cool it is. But anyway, enough about that. I'm so thankful for all of you being here. Thank you for buying the merch. Thank you for supporting us on all of our channels. And I'm going to see you very soon tomorrow. I hope that I can watch tonight so I can give you a little recap, and hopefully we can get more people on these lives as well, because I think the conversation is so awesome when we have people to bounce our ideas and our conversations off of. So thank you so much for being the first Law Baddies and supporting this channel. Thank you so, so, so much. I will see you real soon. Bye.